universe, formless supersubstance, just like we do. And through these archetypal ideas, project living forms, the minerals, the plants, the animals, bodies of the human being, but not the human being itself. Only the bodies the self uses during incarnation in the three worlds of existence. And more specifically, they address these ideas with different forms of mind. And again, it's not the thinking mind, our thinking mind, or material brains. And mind is a living substance, living supersubstance used by God and the archangels as a means of creation. Creation of everything existing, but not the creation of ourself, our I. The mind is not divine because it's not God, but it emanates from God. That's why we call it holy mind, the holy mind. It emanates from God and all the eternal spirit beings in God. So the archangels dress these ideas in layers. It's the same way we dress in the morning. We put our underwear on, then our pants. We don't put our pants on, then our underwear on. So these forms have to be dressed in a very logical sequence. And again, the dress is just different frequencies of the mind. So the higher noetic supersubstance they use to form the higher noetical body. Noetic substance, they form our noetical body. Psychical substance, forming the psychical body. Material substance, solid matter, forming the material body. Of course, each of these has an etheric counterpart. So we're being dressed, these forms are being dressed in a logical order. And all they do is they take this formless supersubstance mind and start lowering its vibration to get to these other states to dress the forms. So there's a cause and effect relationship between meditation and thought. Archangels are meditating, shaping the formless supersubstance into archangelic thoughts. This is showing you that meditation is the cause and thought is the effect of the result. Through a light radiance that begins at the noetic, it descends. As it descends, it gets noetical. Now we call it a form. Now it has a form. Now we call it a thought form. Further into the psychical. These noetical thought forms create psychical thought forms. But they're not material yet. You can't see them. You can have an idea about a car. That's a noetical thought form. But it doesn't have a material existence until you buy the car, I guess. So that's basically what they do. But coming to the material world, we can rightly say our words and behaviors are shadows of our thoughts. They are shadows of activity behind our words and thoughts that we can't see. A world of idea meanings is hidden in a single word. There's a Zen saying that a fish trap exists for the fish. Once you catch a fish, you can forget about the trap and concentrate on the fish. In a similar way, words exist for their meaning. Once you get the meaning of the word, you can forget about the word itself and concentrate on the meaning. But to catch the meaning, we must know the language of ideas. The language of ideas are the meanings behind the word. We can know the word by listening with our ears, but to catch the meaning behind the word, we have to open the heart and mind. Have you ever tried to convey an idea to somebody whose heart and mind was closed? Very tough, if not to say impossible in most cases. Therefore, one who knows the language of ideas can catch the deep meanings behind the spoken word, sometimes way more than the speaker of those words. Archangels lower the mind further into the psychical world. Now this same mind in the human beings, when we express it, is expressed as desire, which means just the personality's will to do this or that. Continuing on, they lower the mind to the lowest frequencies, presenting a solid material body and its etheric double. Solid matter is the lowest vibration of the mind. It doesn't get any denser than this. There's nothing below this material world that's lower in terms of vibration. This is the reason Daskalos always declared it so strongly. Everything is mind in different rates of frequencies. Now, being a contemplative person is a core value. But as a personality, we must perform actions in this world. but we should act like a thinking person. What's the saying? Think like a man of action and act like a man of thinking. That's what it's asking for. That's what we're asking for, yeah. That's what we're looking for. This means contemplating before we act, thinking before we act. So try to foresee the likely outcomes from that action. And then compare that with the cost of achieving them, which means monetary cost, time cost, all the effort and trouble to achieve it. We contemplate on that and we say, is the outcome worth the cost? Is it necessary? Does it really improve things for us or anybody? And most importantly, is it in line with your life's purpose? As a personality, we have many, many temporary aims and goals, but ultimately one purpose, and that purpose is to achieve the aim of God's contemplation of the divine plan, which is what? For us to return home as a self-realized prodigal son. Nothing comes into manifestation that does not have a purpose. Absolutely everything in creation exists because there's a reason for it to exist and a purpose that's coming from the divine contemplation, the divine plan. Now the divine contemplation is like an endless movement. It never stops moving. It's constantly contemplating. And this endless movement must produce a result. It doesn't just do it and nothing happens. There's a result from it. And that result is creation and everything in creation. All of creation and everything in creation has a job or mission to fulfill. This is its purpose for its existing, given to it by God and the holy monadic beings through this contemplation. And this is represented, we're going to do a whole seminar on the Son of Life, or maybe more than one. But, okay, this is God, right? This area represents God's contemplation. And the reason it's black here, these are the archangelic participants, is black here is because we don't really know anything about it. All we can know about it is the result that comes from it. So we know that obviously God's contemplating the creation of plants, animals, and all that stuff. But we don't know anything about it. Well, you will one day when you experience that state, but for this point in time, we really don't know anything about it. We just know it's an endless movement, and movement is the characteristic of life itself. You can't imagine life that's not something moving.
Daniel, does that correspond to a spot on us here?
Yeah, in our body, it represents the place between the thyroid and above the heart. And you'll notice here, there are no organs here. Every place else has an organ going on. So there's really, it's that area there. And God's contemplation must have a purpose to achieve, and that purpose must eventually be completed. And the purpose is the return home of the prodigal son. Now, does everybody know that story, that parable? Okay. I just want to touch through the meanings behind it again, just to make sure we're clear on it. I won't tell the story, but he asked the father for his inheritance to leave, to go away. And you have to notice that the father isn't displeased by this. He's not mad because the kid wants to take his inheritance and go away. God isn't, we didn't get cast out of the garden like the story tells us. He gave his son his inheritance, knowing the son one day would return, because God knows everything, of course. So he goes off to a faraway country, which is incarnation on earth. And he spends all that inheritance on wild living with criminals and prostitutes. Left without an inheritance, the famine came. So to survive, he tends the herd of pigs and feeds the pigs with husk of corn. So this part means he's spending his inheritance, which again is mine, on creating negative and destructive thought forms and feelings, serving the devil of his own egoism, instead of creating positive, constructive thought forms. So the pigs represent low-level thought forms, destructive thought forms, undesirable negative elementals. He, as a personality, was serving these lower things, which just means he was serving his weaknesses and thoughts. His weaknesses and faults, sorry. Now notice that his inner self, his soul self, never interfered with his wrongdoing. And we look in life and we see great crimes against other people. And say, well, God is in that person. Why hasn't God stopped you? Why is this allowed? From even your own inner self, why is it allowed? Because God gave total freedom to all the beings. And likewise, our inner self gives total freedom to the personality self to go and waste the inheritance, learn the lessons, and then eventually return. But the inner self, God leaves everything to the law of destiny, to the law of cause and effect, that will one day bring him back to his senses, bring us back to our senses. How? Unfortunately, through sufferings and ordeals, until we wake up to the reality. So at this point in the parable, the son starts to contemplate. He starts to sit down and really think, well, there's plenty of food in my Father's kingdom, I'm starving. So he's starving because of his own actions. We're suffering because of our own actions. From his contemplation, he gets an unconflicted decision. Now, this is very important, unconflicted. And that's why a lot of people, they try to get rid of bad habits or weaknesses in them, but they don't have the unconflicted. So if you say, I'm going to give up smoking and then you smoke again, or whatever your thing is, you do it and then you don't do it, and you do it and you don't do it. It just means you haven't come to an unconflicted decision. That's all it means. And nothing's going to happen it's not going to change much until you do.
I read recently that for most addictions,